Welcome, everyone. I'm Mike Mershazadeh.
And I'm Ashley Ward.
And you're listening to the What Matters podcast, and our mission
to spotlight top RIAs, wealth managers, and investment professionals who are redefining wealth management.
Join us as we dive into their journey, strategies, and insights.
Whether you're an investor or an inspiring pro, this is for you.
Get ready for impactful conversations on the What Matters podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the What Matters podcast, where we delve into conversations with remarkable individuals making a difference in the field of wealth management. I'm your host, Mike Mershazadeh.
And I'm Ashley Ward.
Today, we have a special guest joining us from Heritage Wealth Advisors. She's a CEO and founder of the firm and a highly respected figure in the world of wealth management and tax advisory. Please welcome Dee Ann, and I want to pronounce this right. Is it Remo?
It's Remo. That's correct.
Great.
Well,
nice to be with you guys today.
We're so excited to have you with us. It's a pleasure to have you on the store. Oh my goodness. It's been a minute. Well, Dee Ann, let's jump right in and start talking a little bit about you. So let's start by learning about your journey as an entrepreneur in the wealth management space. Can you share with us your story about founding Heritage Wealth Advisors? That was back in 2005, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, 2005. This is our 20th year, so it's a special time to be talking about the firm. I got my start in, I worked with one of the big four accounting firms, and I was a partner in the practice of personal financial planning. And so really from a very early time in my career, I had my children and I flipped to a part-time schedule. And as a result of that schedule, I got assigned, the individual work, and it was fabulous. It was the best thing that could have happened to me. I immediately went out and got my CFP and kind of never looked back. And that was a great environment because we were doing very sophisticated, high-level planning. And we were really, really trusted advisors for our clients. So it was a great place to learn. But by the end of the 90s, coming into the 2000s, I could see that what people really wanted was an expansion of the relationship. So they wanted to get really great planning advice and ideas, but they really wanted help with the implementation, being able to actually take people through the work involved with making the outcomes, what you're trying to achieve. So I had an idea of what that could look like and what was happening at the same time. And I was just very fortunate and lucky. The RIA space was crossing over from sort of a cottage industry into a real, industry. And I think it was very appealing to people coming out of law firms and accounting firms because we want to be a fiduciary, and people are drawn to the RIA space, I think, because, we're obligated to do just that. And so it's a perfect space to be. And so I was able to pull the skills and the planning again at that very high level with sophisticated individual and families and pull that into Heritage right from the beginning. So I did. We started the firm in 2005.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When did you get into the industry? You said you were working at one of the big four accounting firms.
Oh my gosh. Now you're asking my age. What's with you? No, that's okay. I don't mind at all. I had a birthday last week and I don't mind at all. I actually started in the city of Pittsburgh. And I started my career in 1986. And so really moved to Richmond, Virginia in 91. And that is when I really started working exclusively in the high net worth space. To the extent I worked on the business side, it was when you really couldn't separate the business from the family. And I think a lot of people in our space have clients like that, where there's family-owned businesses either still there or that were the core of the wealth creation. So,
yeah. And let me ask you this. So, you've grown the firm to what now, 4 billion in AUM?
Yeah, 4.5, I think. Yep.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's amazing. And, how did that take place? Did you guys grow the company, organically, inorganically?
It was organic for the most part up until we did an acquisition in the fall of 2023. So up until that point, all of our growth was organic. And, It was interesting because when you kind of cut your teeth learning that the advice part of what you do has a lot of value, along with, of course, asset management. And, the industry always talks in assets under management lingo. Um, you know, but I knew how to actually attract clients that were willing to pay us for the advice and, give things a try while they, contemplated whether or not they wanted to move their assets. And so one of the things that I, looking backward can say is we had a real secret weapon in that we could get paid to wait. And not just paid to wait, but paid to do work that was just driving stronger and stronger relationships with our clients, more knowledge about the families, multi-generational, what were these people passionate about, how to help them with philanthropy. So all the things that really tie you to a person, including income tax, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And so it becomes natural when you're doing that work, when you have a great high level investment, platform and product, that people just want to make that move and have you be able to take care of everything for them. And so that was really what we saw happening.
And let me ask you this, with you guys having your company for, 23 plus years, and then, or
20 years,
20 years, at that time it was 18 years. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was rewinding back to the year 2000.
Oh, gotcha.
So you had your company for call it 18 years, and then you brought on, an acquisition. How did that culturally align with everything?
I've said this many times, and, I kind of mean it. It's not just a joke I make. I'm sort of pleased I went through that one with a whole lack of knowledge about what would happen, because there were things we learned, but we delighted in the learning process, because it was like, oh, didn't know we were going to have to think of that. And we didn't get ourselves all wrung around the axle. But in hindsight, there's a number of people who have just made the comment to me that to be as well integrated and working as a team, and really the way we've integrated the clients in such a short period of time really is something that we should be proud of. And so I am proud of that. I do think there are a lot of things that we did well, and I would do it again. And then, like I said, there were things we learned, and I was pleased to learn them. And, again, delight in the fact that we would know how to think differently about a few things in the future.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Well, what would be one of those things you think that you learned through that acquisition?
I think the first thing is that when you look at the clients that are there, it's like you can't just project your relationships that you currently have or the way you work with people onto the clients. You have to probably like the best way is to actually get the team in with the client, which we did as fast as possible in all cases. But so that I think we were thinking, oh, everybody kind of approaches what they're doing the way we do. And I think we kind of didn't. We actually did. We learned right away that no, that's not necessarily true. And so, really helping educate the clients and the team about all of the different things that we do that go beyond just the asset management was something that, became something that I think bound clients to us faster when they understood the value of that. And so I would come out with that much faster and clearer in communications with clients in the future.
And let's talk a little bit about your firm structure. So $4.5 billion, I can't imagine you do it all alone.
No way.
Tell us a little bit about your team. How many employees are over there? How many advisors do we have? Junior advisors? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have, I think it's about 40 people in total, and we have a very strong culture of interns. So at any point in time, right now, I think we have 3 or 4 interns, across departments. We have somebody who's part-time in our marketing department, for instance. So it's not just people coming into the finance space. So that's part of the number that changes over time. We have 3 offices. We have Richmond, Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so, um, just kind of a little bit of a different flavor depending on where people are. We work as teams, and it is really important to us culturally that, people who are part of the overall team are comfortable working in subsets of teams. And, early on when it was really small and I could kind of see everybody at one time, I used to say it this way, and I think it still happens this way, but sometimes it's virtual. But it was like watching a ballet through the day where you might have 3 people come together to talk about, one client or set of clients. Then they'd break apart, and then people from other groups would come together. And it was just a constant coming together and information sharing. And so in today's world, we have to learn how to do that while not being, in the same office with people, but we can do it. Technology allows us to make that happen. You have to work a little harder for it, but you can still make that magic happen. And so the teams are really, really important.
And then let me ask you this: in growing to $4.5 billion, did you guys have you said you had an intern that joined the marketing department. Do you guys do a lot of outreach marketing, or is it a lot of referral clientele that comes to you?
Well, at the beginning, and it's kind of like, oh, history, but again, I love how often people get lucky, and I got lucky. And I just say this: I got lucky that the RIA space was developing the way it was, and I got lucky that the financial crisis happened when it did. And the reason
you're the first person that's ever said that.
It was like the reason that I got lucky was because we were still new enough we could manage the level of clients that we had, and we could be proactive in a way that, you might be just a bit slower, larger. And we were extremely proactive, keeping in mind that we were tied to people for services far beyond just the asset management. And because we had all the information, we were able to really help people see their current picture in a way that allowed them, they say, get people moving from the back of their brain to the front of their brain. And because we're able to quickly present to people, here's your balance sheet. Here's how we've been looking at how your cash, like it was all together already. And we could kind of talk people, for lack of a better phrase, talk them in off the ledge a little bit with facts that caused the conversation to change. And the reason I say we were lucky is because there was a long period of time, kind of afterwards, during and afterwards, when people wouldn't have dreamed of changing because they were frozen in place. Yeah. But once the movement started, that worked in our favor very strongly. And so that was, again, I think that was fortunate. We were the size we were able to be extremely nimble and respond to that. And the clients came. The number one way we've gotten our growth over the years is through, referrals, client referrals, professional referrals. And I think you guys probably hear that over and over again from the people you talk to. It's a trust business. And so that's the primary way that we've gathered clients over the years.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about being proactive there. Earlier today, I was venting to Ashley. I had a call with my financial advisor today, right? I won't say their name because we're on the podcast, and if I accidentally do, Ashley, you got to mark the clip. Well, one thing last year they had taken, a good, I de-risked last year or starting in 2023, and anyhow, I wanted to go in the money market because the yield was high, and they had put me into a savings account with earning 0.45%.
Oh my!
And when I figured it out, they owed me quite a bit of money, and we finally got that figured out. Yeah. And then getting on the phone with them today, because they manage 15, 17 billion or something like that, maybe more. And then getting on the phone with them today, Q4 of last year, I said I wanted to, take my stock portfolio, go into, less risk
Right.
Out of high alpha and things like that,
Right.
and, more into value and big, large cap. And he said, "Oh, well, we didn't move you, right?" And I said, "Well, I thought you guys had moved me 3 months ago." Well, thankfully the market moved up, so I got the gain there.
Yeah.
But it's just, I make sure now that, right after I got off the phone, I just documented a long message email going over there to make sure that everything I said, comes to fruition. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. When back in 08, 09, being able to be proactive with all of your clients, probably worked out really well in your benefit.
I do want to kind of hit on one more thing with your growth. So
Sure.
You mentioned COVID time. That was really good year.
The crisis.
The crisis was good year and whatnot. So what size were you guys around that time that it was, perfect time, perfect size?
Oh, you mean it like for the financial crisis? Oh goodness, I'd have to go back and look. But I would guess at least several hundred million. But like keep in mind, we deal with, higher net worth individuals as our client base.
Right.
And that might be something we talk about. We segment them. And so I can give you a little bit of background about the segmentation. And so that doesn't equate to the same number of households
Right.
as it might for other, depending on who your target or your audience is. But I don't know, it was probably several million, but we were well on our way. We were established, but we weren't. Yeah.
And with already being at $4.5 billion, I feel like we talk to a lot of people, and it, there comes a point in their assets where it's, around that 2 billion mark that they kind of hit that hurdle of it's hard to grow past that point. Do you feel like there was ever a time where it really, growth was a challenge, and how did you, overcome that hurdle to, break into that next group?
Well, yeah, like one thing, again, going back to kind of our history, keeping in mind, so if people pushed me on what are the services, just one at a time. I mean, obviously it's the asset management, and for the size clients we have, pretty sophisticated, right? And so we also, we're gearing up right now. We do the overwhelming majority of our clients' income tax returns. And, like in our family office space, or even like further down in our next segment is what we call family CFO. At those levels, they have entities surround, like they have real estate entities, family partnerships, charitable trusts, all of the things that go with that. And we do the tax work for all of those things, as well as, distributions, all the work around, everything that goes into keeping the family in the entities just chugging along functionally and all of that. And then really that sophisticated planning, but basic planning too, right? It doesn't matter how much money you have. Sometimes your question is the same question that, anybody else would ask about their benefits, or, like home insurance, or, whatever, that particular question is. So we're just well versed across all of those spaces. One thing I would say is, as a group, our clients are extremely philanthropic. It is not a requirement when somebody comes to us. It just is. That's who finds us for the most part. And so we are really very good philanthropic planners for everything, for estate tax, income tax, making, helping people really define what it is they want to change, and just all that goes into that. And that's very delightful work. Well, that type of work is extremely sticky. I mean, we pay our clients income taxes for them. Some of them, they might need to send us 2 pieces of information because we're in possession of all. If they made a charitable gift, we probably made it. So we have it here already. And so, that type of reliance is very, very sticky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I'm not sure I answered your question, but I wanted to make sure that
I love the direction you went into there, because I think it really then speaks about the culture of, not how strong your culture is at your firm, that your clients are very similar in that way. That's amazing.
Yeah, you carved out your niche.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
and shifting gears a bit there. let me ask you, for the future of Heritage, do you guys have a G2 in place? Where do you guys see yourselves?
Yeah.
7, 10 years out from now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's hard for all of us. I've watched some of the listen to and watch some of the podcasts that you guys do. And I'd say as a group, we're all the same, right? This is our baby at some level. And so, we're all turning it over. It is really something that I personally and the firm are extremely focused on. And so my we use EOS. And so like my rock the past quarter was to actually go ahead. I decided to have some outside consultant. I realized this was something that I really couldn't do as much on my own. And the direction I went with the consulting was, you know, yeah, nobody should have to care about my feelings or whatever. It's like, who is coming up and what are their strengths and weaknesses? Do we have people here that really are capable, which is the best answer? And of anybody that should be considered, very clearly with an independent third party, getting strengths and weaknesses so that they can decide how hard they want to work to have their hat in the ring. And so we paired with a group, I'll give them a plug, Admired Leadership. I'm still in the process, but they did a great job so far. And I'm hopeful that the outcome will be good. And it will give me a little bit more of a map. And then I'm sure my next rock will be like, where am I going with this? So yeah. And like, I'm always vague about how much longer I want to work because we all know, like, you can control in this environment what work is. But for me, this is my passion. I have 2 granddaughters. I have children, of course, who I adore. But once you're a grandparent or a dog owner, right? Like, what else is there? And so that being Dee Dee is my favorite role in the world. And, that's number one. But I love this. I love what I do. I love the team. I get to work with smart people, and I'm talking about my clients and my teammates. You really make decisions that move the needle for people in their lives. Like, I'm not ready to be done with it yet, but I've got to get that next generation so that we do have a map. I don't want to lose people because they're afraid of what happens because I haven't been clear.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a common theme with everyone we talk to. It's like if they could work until the day they die, they would.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, I do think most of us are attracted to it for reasons that would be similar from person to person. We might say it differently, but I think it's probably, we probably are drawn here in the first place and then want to stay here for the same reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2020, when I had sold my company, I was, had retired thinking that's what the end goal was. And I was absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
I guess like yourself, we're just individuals that we want to be proactive and we want to be productive and we like working,
Yeah.
especially if you like waking up and doing what you do, then it's more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Dee Ann, looking at the broader landscape of the industry, talking about the future in those terms, what do you see on the horizon for financial planning, wealth management, RA space?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. It's continuing to evolve. What is your perspective on that?
Well, I do sometimes say, oh, my job's to look around corners and see what's there. And sometimes it's really hard to do. A number of different things, I think. I think it's going to get more challenging. I think a lot of us were fortunate. Again, we were the fortunate beneficiaries of an industry, that was coming into fruition over our careers, really. And then we were the beneficiary. If you just look at the last X number of years, I mean, we've all had the wind at our back. And, I think a mistake a person could make in this industry right now is thinking they're smarter than they are because the market might have helped, right? The market might have helped a lot of us. And So I really think you have to know your weaknesses for the future because, everything reverts to a mean. And like sooner or later, we'll get tested. And when you have this long a period of time where you haven't been dramatically tested, I think that's a little bit dangerous. So being grounded, I think is going to be about, like we're probably not all geniuses. I'll speak for myself right now, right? We've been fortunate a little bit. And so what do we need to be doing and thinking about in order to strengthen ourselves and our people and our teams for a more challenging environment? And I think there's a lot of work being done right now that is asking the question about organic and inorganic growth. And I think if you're like fibbing to yourself about whether you have organic growth or whether you have the market at your back, I feel like that's going to be dangerous for a number of people as well. So, you've got to grow. You have to have a culture of that type of growth. We deal a lot with individuals. We have institutional clients. Our individuals, like, unfortunately, one day they won't be with us. And if you're dealing in the high net worth space, no matter how great a planner you are, and we're good, there's going to be some amount of estate tax that's going to go out the door. And so, like being humble about what's could be coming toward us, I think is really important, and being honest about it. But that organic growth, you have got to be watching that because, it's just, I hope it doesn't come as a shock to other people in this industry. But if you're not growing, I think you do have to maybe look for organically, then maybe you have to look for another solution, which might be finding somebody to partner with.
Yeah. It's crazy because, throughout the last 3 years and being in this space, I've, talked to, actually somewhere we've talked to hundreds, 500, 600 different firms. And Dee Ann, it would blow your mind, how when you talk to some of these individuals and you're like, well, how much are you growing? They're like 11% net of market every year. And then little do they know they're losing 8% of client fallout, right?
Yeah.
Of clients, pulling their money or, spending their money.
Paying taxes, buying a second home, giving it away to philanthropy. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big number. Yeah. The more that you have, the bigger that number is. And it's leaving here for the right reasons, other than, say, overpaying tax. Like, you got to do the best job you can to keep the tax numbers low. But if somebody's given to philanthropy, that's great. The communities we live in are better places when that is a decision. Oh, I apologize. And but if so, there's good reasons that money is going out. People are living their lives, they're buying their second home, their third home, whatever. But yeah, you have to know that number. By the way, you have to know when you start on January 1st, what is your best guess of what's going out in the way of taxes, philanthropy, things like that. And because you got to get up over that. That's before you even can count anything, you got to get up over that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in conclusion here, and I'm not going to pin you on this, by the way, but
okay.
I wanted to ask what there's so much that's been happening. Well, a couple questions. I should break it down. The first one I'll ask, so much has been happening in this space, right? With private equity and acquisition. I think just, RIAs alone acquired close to 400, other
Right.
RIAs last year. And that's
Right.
not including, outside, private equity and whatnot.
Right.
What's your opinion on that, first and foremost?
Well, I just think everybody's situation is different. First of all, I'll say that. So it's hard I don't think anybody should speak on behalf of decisions that are made across the industry. And then it's probably different on how you feel about whether or not you've had a team that, you've been strategic about having a team because you wanted to make sure that maybe things could continue on. For me, my acid test has always been, I'll speak about the firm and then I'll speak about how we look at other ways to grow. But if I thought, I really like I don't even, I don't mean to sound mean, but I don't even read the emails most of the time or listen to the full voicemails of all the people that would like to buy the firm, because that's not like in my line of vision in the short term. I really want to focus on, wow, wouldn't it be super cool if, like, as a keystone of all this time I've spent doing this, that there were people here capable of running it and they could keep it going. And then you can't be sad if they sell it at, like within some period of time. But that would be a really kind of fun thing to do, to say, wow, I actually worked with people, then I was able to put them in a position of running it behind me. So for me, that's a very interesting thought experiment, and I'm hopeful that it works. Now, if at any time, I felt like we could not bring the best work to the clients because I'm insisting on remaining, independent like this, that would be something that I would have to stop and consider. I don't think we're even close to there right now. I really don't. I feel like you can still be, you know, your firm, and, there's still like access to information, access to investments. The entry cost is, lower than you might expect. So I still think we can bring the best to our clients for a period of time without needing to sell ourselves. And for me, like, what I would get from, like, I've this has been a nice, fruitful exercise. I don't need much more, but it'd be super cool if it kept going. So we'll see. We'll see. May or may not work out.
So, and let me ask you this: what's your, with everything that's happened, since COVID, it's been close to 5 years now, right?
Yeah.
I believe. We've had interest rates, the 10-year Treasury go from 0.6 to all the way up to 5, right?
Right.
And change, and we've had different. Every 4 years, we've had a different president. What's your economic outlook? And I said, I'm not going to pin you on this. What's your economic outlook for these next few years?
I mean, I would say that, we look at, we're numerically driven, fact driven to a large extent. And we look at things right now and we think it's a time to be very thoughtful about allocations, to truly understand, people's ability to take that extra amount of risk, based on all of the depth of information that we as a firm, I feel like, have, again, intimate knowledge of. And I'll use the word intimate knowledge of. We know, what people want to achieve. And so I would say that we definitely are a little bit, teeny bit more postured toward continued, volatility. When I say what we're doing, I don't like to say that we're defensively postured. I think what we are is allocated differently right now. And that is different than just saying we're just completely defensive at this moment in time. And we meet a lot to ask some hard questions about where we find ourselves and how we feel like we might want to look at changes we want to make, in a fast moving world, is just the way that I would say it. And, there's always the core, like the core's the core, and you're going to stick with that. And, just do a really good job with that. I will say in the private space, like, it's just critically important if you're dealing, with anybody that you would define as a high wealth client, you have to be able to get them, reasonable cost access to really high quality private investments. And so that's something that I think a lot of us across the industry, have made decisions about how we're going to access, the private space. And I think that continues to be critically important for how we build portfolios.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end off our conversation today, Dee Ann. It's been so much fun talking to you. You are just a wealth of knowledge. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And again, like I said when we first got started, I find it fascinating that the industry shares as much as they do with each other. And this is one great way that that happens. I wonder, as we wrap up, if I could ask something that we didn't talk about. And I don't want to sound like I'm on a soapbox, but I was curious when you guys splice it together if it might be something of interest. And, you know, I did a webinar, gosh, I guess, I don't know, it was probably 6 months ago. And it was funny because one of the questions, I don't even remember exactly what the question was, but one of the answers that I gave just elicited so much incoming, in terms of mostly positive. but but one of the things I spoke about, and I'm curious if you guys have had this in other podcasts, is just the general lack of diversity that we have in this industry. A lot of people like to say, well, you're a woman owned firm, and they lead with that. That's great. That's fine. Um, I do think we're doing a much better job at pulling, bright women along in this industry and really, allowing them to succeed. But I still think the industry probably has a diversity problem, period. And have you guys ever talked to people about that?
We have, and we have, and I would say that, we have our best podcasts with women, right?
Yeah.
The ones that Ashley and I look forward to the most, because I can tell you when, I would say the male ego gets involved, they never talk about when times were bad, or, it's just, more about how, just more about themselves and more about achievements rather than, what they did to get there. And that was something that you did a great job at explaining today. And so when in approaching that topic, right, because the majority of our audience is,
Right.
males, bringing up that topic to them, we get short answers usually, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of uncomfortability, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is, like, I'm sad and I'm in Richmond, and we're working at, like, for us, we need experience and color diversity much more.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the women, you pull that up, and we have diversity. Really, if you look at our website, you'll see diversity. I want more diversity with people in the room. And the comment that I made, people in the room with clients, as opposed to being really good at support or other things that people might be doing. The comment that I made on that that other in that other situation is, I just said we would be better for it all around, period, as an industry, as leaders. Like, if we had people who really have walked different paths, I feel like we would be better at what we do. And that really just elicited a lot of people's, like something about asking whether, like it's not just about saying shame on you, but asking, would you be better if you tried to create a more diverse environment? And I just think that's a different way of looking at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
so. Anyway,
just in terms of women, that's like the blank obvious one. It's predominantly male industry, and it's kind of crazy. But just as a woman, like whenever we talk to a woman executive on our podcast, or speaking to you, it's like so inspiring to hear of a woman, founder, CEO who's built this big firm, right? But it's also, you think about the contrary to it, it's like, why does that have to be so abnormal and shocking, Like,
that's right.
Why can't that be the norm?
Oh, I have to tell you, I turned 61 last week, and like, I would have never put a bet on the fact that we'd still be talking about the fact that I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I look at my 27-year-old self, there would have been no way I would have put a bet on the table that somebody would care whether I was a woman at age 61. And yet, yeah, that's sometimes the lead And so it's just interesting. And so it goes. We'll figure it out. And, I do think there is much more opportunity than there used to be. So anyway, I don't like to, I certainly don't want to sound like I'm being preachy at all. I just really hope people ask the question, would we be better?
And I think that's a topic that we usually do hit on with every female guest, because it is, we definitely probably have more male guests on the show because there is more available. So
yeah. Well, you could even, if you guys wanted to at some point, and I think we're done. I'm just saying this, but I wonder if you did a podcast, even with maybe a couple of people or something, where when you asked what the future brings, it was based on what are firms going to need to do to keep their talent and to, attract the best talent, and kind of see where that leads in a conversation around the importance of, that type of leadership. Because I think people are starved to hear that conversation as well.
Yeah. Well,
so anyway,
great way to end off our conversation today. Thank you again. Such a pleasure having you on the show, Dee Ann. And to all of our listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the What Matters podcast. Remember, success is not just about what you achieve. It's about making an impact along the way. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.